Andy Johnson. We are looking at a skills lesson plan, both the process and the product, related to designing effective skills lesson plans, whether it be reading, mathematics, athletics, or anything. There are some essential elements. They contain some, most, or all of these things, and we'll be looking at each one of them. First, the academic standard. Now, not every skills lesson plan is related to an academic standard, but it is good to learn how to teach from an academic standard. Standards are part of our educational experience in this time. Could be state or national, Common Core, whatever, or a curriculum standard. But it's good to learn how to teach specifically from or to a standard. This is the standard for this lesson plan that I'm going to model. It's about verbs. And there's the Minnesota Academic Standard, very much related to the Common Core State Standard. A learning goal or a purpose statement. In the process of designing this lesson, I ask myself, what am I trying to teach? What's the purpose? What do I want students to learn? This works best if you can say it in one sentence, and it works best for me and for most people when it is non-behavioral, not put in behavioral terms. For example, I want students to learn about verbs. That's what I want them to learn about. Okay, that helps me in my planning. The next part is a learning objective or a behavioral objective. I put the purpose statement in the form of a specific behavior that I would like to see at the end of the lesson. I can say yes or no in terms of, are they able to do that? What behavior do I want to see as a result of teaching? What will students be able to do? Now keep this flexible. It's very common after planning the lesson that you come back and tweak this a little bit. So keep it flexible here. And my example is, students will demonstrate their understanding of verbs by correctly identifying the verbs in 10 sentences. I can say yes or no in terms of, are students able to do this? All right, that is a behavior I want to see. Assessment. How do I know if that has been met, if they can do that? How do I know learning has taken place? Now, I prefer to do this as the last part of the lesson. And again, I plan out what I want to teach, and then I come back and I tweak this a little bit. It could be a formal measure, a quiz, worksheet, specific product, less formal, an activity, game, performance. And again, sometimes assessment comes later. Sometimes I'll teach today and assess maybe on Thursday or Friday. All right. Now, I didn't have a good idea of exactly how I was going to assess that until I planned the lesson. Then I had a much better idea on how I wanted to assess that. So it's very common to design the assessment as the last part of the lesson. All right. Students will be given a worksheet as part of independent practice with 10 sentences on them. In each, students must underline the verb. I've taken the learning objective and I've described it a little bit more. So the reader knows exactly what to do, how assessment is going to take place. All right. And it's common to use 2 to 4 sentences here. Assessment. Materials required. That's pretty self-explanatory, but it's good in planning through a lesson to think through the lesson. What do I need? And to write down exactly what you need. It's clear up here. It's clear on your lesson plan. The opening. The purpose is to connect the new to the known. Provide an overview. Activate relevant schemata. What do you know about this? Or identify the purpose of the lesson. Today we're going to learn about. Keep it simple. All right, anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes at the most. But it's an opening. You are introducing the lesson. Today, ask the class to name some things they do after school. Boys and girls, what are some things you like to do after school? And I'd write their examples on the board, and I'd underline and I'd point to the verbs. And I'd tell students, these are all verbs. Let's learn about verbs today. That's my opening. Simple, to the point, connecting new to the known. The input is the heart of the lesson. the specific information students need to know. I recommend short abbreviated sentences using outline form, and you see an example of the outline form that I recommend. That way you can clearly see the structure of the lesson, and if you're using the lesson like I do when I'm teaching children, I put it down so I can quickly see at a glance where I'm at. The modeling and demonstration is here. Teacher directions or actions are often put in parentheses, and you'll see that here. Guided practice is part of lesson input. It is a scaffold or a learning experience with structure, and I'll show you an example. It's taking the students through the skill or using the skill, providing some structure to see if they get it, to see if all students get it. It could be something as doing the first two together, doing some with a partner, doing one by yourself, and a walk around and look. All right, somehow students are able to successfully go through the skill with your scaffolding. Here's an example for this lesson. Boys and girls, the things you chose are all verbs. Verbs is an action word, a doing word, a thing or a person doing something. These are examples. These students will be written on the smartboard. You can see that yourself, blah, 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 blah. These are all actions. What's Milo doing? He's drinking. What's Sally doing? She's playing, etc., etc., etc. All right? These are all actions. Remember, a noun is a thing, person, place. You can see it, touch it. Can you see milk? Yes, you can. Can you see drinking? No, you can't see drinking, but you can see a person, a noun, drinking milk. Let's find the nouns in the sentences above. Now, this way I'm reinforcing nouns, a lesson I did yesterday. All right, here's guided practice. Note to myself, the sentences below will appear individually on a smartboard. They are taken from today's story. The first two sentences, read them together using scaffolded oral reading. Reread them slowly, point to each word. Ask students to raise their finger when you stop on the verb. All right, this way you are watching the students to see who's got it and who hasn't got it. All right, very quick way to just get a sense, a formative sense of assessment. The next two, read them together with the class. Scaffolded oral reading again. Ask students to turn to a neighbor and share the verb or action word. What do you think it is? Ask them to tell their neighbor how they know it's a verb. And again, a quick way for you to check in. You're walking around, you're listening to your students. Real simple, formative assessment. The last two, students have thinking paper. Read the sentence together again. Ask students to write the verb on their thinking paper. Quickly circulate to see who's got it. And then the last thing, I'm thinking of a verb. It's something we'll be doing today on today's worksheet. It's something, what is it? Raise hands. Something you do with your hand when you want to be called on. It's another verb, all right? Something you do at the fountain. Again, a riddle, just to simple reinforce this. Independent practice. Students practice what they've already learned. The ideal, if I do my job, students can do this with 95 to 100% success ratio. It's used to practice and reinforce what they have already learned. It's not to measure. That is not the purpose. The goal of education is learning, not measuring. But it can be used as a form of assessment, or assessment can be formative, as I've described, or another point in time. Now here's the independent practice activity. In this lesson, students will be given a verb worksheet, and I have included the worksheet so I can see that. So I may need to read some of the sentences aloud to some student. Very simple, very traditional, doesn't have to be complicated. There's nothing wrong with a worksheet. A worksheet is a valuable tool. It depends on how it's used. The usefulness of any tool is dependent on how it is used. So worksheets can be used very effectively. And again, the learning purpose statement, objective, here's the assessment. Students will be given a worksheet as part of independent practice with 10 sentences. In each, students must underline the verb, all right? That is my assessment. If I've done my job, I can say yes or no in terms of if they can do that. And based on that, I will plan tomorrow's lesson. Independent practice, it gets them using the skill, doesn't have to be a formal measure or a worksheet again. They could write, plan, do, apply, create, analyze. It puts the practice in independent practice, all right? Gets them using the skill. comes in a variety of ways. These are all some extension or activity options I could have done instead of the worksheet. So you don't have to do worksheets, but I wanted to do a worksheet just to give you a sense of that. And you can stop this and look at these individually. And here are some others. All activities that get them using the concept of a verb somehow. Again, the goal is to practice or to reinforce. Now, closing. Not every learning episode has a closing, but it's designed to review or reinforce the main idea or points to remember, and sometimes it points to what you're going to learn next. Boys and girls, remember, verbs are action words. It's 12 o'clock. I'm thinking of a verb. We'll be doing it in the cafeteria. Who knows what it is? And that is my lesson plan on skills lesson planning.